As usual, he opened his shop at 8 in the morning, cleaned up, and started reading the newspaper. After skimming through the headlines, he turned the page and jumped back in shock. Quickly, he read the entire news article. The news was as follows. The inauguration of the new and largest shopping mall in the city by Khurram Pasha, the younger son of Iqbal Pasha. What startled him wasn't the news itself, but the photograph of Khurram Pasha printed alongside it. He immediately checked the date on the front page of the newspaper. The newspaper wasn't old. It bore today's date. Wrinkles of thought appeared on his forehead. What is going on? He asked himself. If Khurram was alive, then why had she gone to buy a coffin for him? And who was the woman who had purchased the coffin? What was her connection to Khurram or Iqbal Pasha? His astonishment kept growing. And the questions? They had no answers. It was a strange kind of bewilderment, an unusual curiosity that had completely tangled his mind. His name was Shaukat Siddiqui. He completed his education up to matriculation and then started working with his father at their shop. They were in the timber trading business and also made custom coffins on order. For this, they had hired a worker and set up a small sawmill at the shop to cut the wood as needed. This allowed them to prepare the required wood for coffins in-house without relying on external sources. After his father's death, this business fell entirely into Shaukat's hands, and he managed it efficiently. He didn't just deal in ordinary wood, he also traded in expensive, high-quality wood, which brought him significant profits. Moreover, if he managed to acquire rare and valuable old wood, it fetched even higher prices, making the business even more lucrative. A few days ago, as soon as Shaukat opened his shop in the morning, a young woman came in to buy a coffin. Shaukat always kept 2 or 3 coffins ready in the shop, so he showed her the available ones. She chose one, paid the price, and took it with her. While handing over the payment, a piece of newspaper clutched in her hand fell to the ground. On it was the picture of a young man. Shaukat quickly picked it up, but by then, he had already caught a glimpse of the picture. It was of a young man standing next to an expensive car, smiling. The photo appeared to have been cut out from a newspaper. Shaukat wanted to ask who the man was, but his words remained unspoken. Interrupting him, the woman said, "The coffin is for him." Shaukat felt a pang of sadness, but he couldn't understand whether there was sorrow, anger, or hatred in her voice. Her tone was strangely cold. The girl left with the coffin, and Shaukat soon forgot about the incident. But today, when his eyes fell on the news and the photograph, he was deeply shocked. How could someone who had supposedly died several days ago inaugurate a shopping mall just a few days later? Shaukat neither knew Iqbal Pasha nor his son Khurram Pasha. It was only through the news in the newspaper today that he learned the boy's name was Khurram Pasha. Another thought was also swirling in Shaukat's mind. It was possible that the picture the girl had wasn't of Khurram Pasha, but of someone who resembled him. Shaukat was convinced that he was thinking correctly. The boy must have been someone else, but exactly 5 days later, when he read about Khurram Pasha's mysterious death, all his assumptions were proven wrong. Khurram Pasha had died under mysterious circumstances just 1 day before the inauguration of his mall. According to the news, someone had locked him inside a coffin, causing him to suffocate to death. The mention of the coffin in the news left Shaukat deeply disturbed. Several details from that day came rushing back to his mind. The girl with Khurram's picture and her saying, "This coffin is for him." Shaukat Siddiqui was now entangled in a web of questions for which he had no answers. He wanted to go to the police and tell them everything, but he knew it would drag him into a complicated situation. Being a businessman, Shaukat realized it would only bring harm to him, so he decided to stay out of it altogether and chose to remain completely silent. Khurram Pasha was overjoyed today. His dream of building the largest shopping mall in his city had finally come true. Today was the grand inauguration of the mall, and Khurram wanted to make the event so memorable that it would remain etched in people's minds for years to come. He had been preparing for this day for months. With no shortage of money or connections, he spared no expense. People from the city and beyond were invited, including political figures and media personalities. Several renowned singers and artists were also on the guest list. Khurram personally oversaw every detail, working tirelessly day and night to ensure all the arrangements were flawless. The event was to be held in a large section of the mall, which was decorated like a bride, both inside and out. No effort was spared. An enormous amount of money and the hard work of countless people had transformed that part of the mall into something truly extraordinary. The night before the inauguration, Khurram arrived at the mall to inspect the arrangements. Feeling satisfied, he sat down in a corner to relax. A few workers were still busy finishing their tasks. Khurram watched them work while talking to someone on his phone. After a while, he got up, went to his car, and brought back a bottle of alcohol. Sitting in the same spot, he began sipping it slowly. He sat there for a long time. Engrossed in his phone conversation, he didn't even realize when the bottle was emptied. By then, the workers had completed their tasks and left. It was much later that Khurram realized he was sitting there all alone. He checked his phone for the time and was startled to see that it was 11:42 p.m. Thinking it was time to head home, he got up and started walking toward the exit. His steps wobbled, and he had to grab a nearby chair for support. This wasn't new for Khurram. He often got unsteady when he drank too much. He tried to walk again, but after a few steps, he stumbled once more. Leaning against the wall for support, he made his way to the restroom and turned on the faucet. He started washing his face. As he straightened up after washing his face, he saw someone else in the mirror on the wall. Khurram jolted and quickly turned around, but there was no one there. "Seems like it's affecting me more than usual today," he thought to himself. He smiled at his own fear. He turned the tap back on and splashed water on his face. As soon as he turned off the tap and turned around, a scream escaped his lips. Standing barely half an inch away was a girl with an extremely horrifying face. Her shoulder-length hair partially covered half of her face. The flesh on her face hung loosely, as if it had just been ripped apart. Blood oozing from her wounds had stained her clothes red. Her chest and abdomen were covered with deep gashes from which blood continued to flow. Khurram was paralyzed with shock. After his initial scream, no sound escaped his lips again. He just stood there, wide-eyed, staring at the terrifying face. "Do you recognize me?" A strange, coarse voice came from the horrifying face. Her voice was even more terrifying than her appearance. "You wretched man, recognize me," she growled in the same rough voice, stepping closer to Khurram. A nauseating stench emanated from her body, like the smell of a corpse unearthed after years. Terrified, Khurram stepped back but lost his balance, stumbling into the mirror on the wall behind him. With a loud crash, the glass shattered and fell onto him. The shards cut his head and face, leaving him bleeding. Seeing Khurram so scared, the strange creature let out a savage, maniacal laugh. "Why are you afraid now?" You weren't afraid when you killed me and buried me in a coffin, she said in an utterly hateful tone. You. It was as if 1,000 light bulbs lit up in Khurram's mind all at once. Perhaps he didn't just remember something. He remembered everything. Everything he had likely never shared with anyone. Yes, I am the one whom you and your friends... Yes, I am the same person you and your friends killed without reason or guilt, and while locking me in that box and burying me, you didn't even consider that sins can never be hidden. You're alive? Khurram stammered, trembling. Yes, I will remain alive until I turn all of you into a warning for others. Her voice, filled with hatred, echoed with a chilling rasp that sent shivers down Khurram's spine. Sweat, born of pure terror, poured from every pore of Khurram's body, drenching him all the way to his heels. Mercy, please forgive me. Khurram clasped his hands in desperation. In response, a heart-wrenching, bitter laugh erupted from the girl. Did you forgive me? Her question struck him like a blow, silencing him completely. Khurram froze, unable to speak, staring at her as if turned to stone. She stepped closer, grabbed him by the hair, and began dragging him out of the washroom. Khurram screamed, hoping someone might hear him and come to his rescue. He knew 2 security guards patrolled the mall at night, but for some reason, neither of them noticed his car in the parking lot or came inside. It was as if they had vanished. Dragging him mercilessly, she took him to the very spot where the event arrangements had been made. There, a new coffin lay on the floor, one Khurram hadn't seen before. Perhaps she had brought it herself. She threw him onto the floor, and... You had inflicted a great deal of cruelty on many for this place. Today you will die in this very spot. And here, it will not be an opening ceremony, but the end of your life. And even after your death, I will not let you rest in peace. After saying this, she placed Khurram into the coffin, added a piece of paper, and sealed it shut. She then wrapped the carpet that was spread on the floor around the coffin. She dragged the coffin and hid it between 2 heavy tables, tucked away in a corner amidst the piled-up items. Khurram's phone had fallen outside, and she stepped on it, crushing it underfoot. A terrible, triumphant laugh escaped her lips as she reveled in the moment. Moments later, she had returned to her true form. No one would have been able to tell that this beautiful girl was the same terrifying-faced witch they had seen just moments ago. From beneath the piled-up items, there were faint sounds of tapping and the scratching of wood, which gave her a strange sense of satisfaction. She smiled broadly and stepped out of the mall. Her first prey had been successful. Now, she was on the hunt for her second victim. She had only taken a few steps out of the mall when someone behind her called out, telling her to stop.